What if the thing hurting your marriage, parenting, and mental health isn't anger itself, but the way you've been taught to handle it? Today, I'm joined by therapist and anger intelligence expert Davina Hehn. We talk about parenting, communication, conflict, and why understanding your anger could change your relationships. If you've ever lost your patience with your kids, argued with your partner, or struggled to manage your emotions, this episode is for you. And if you enjoy it, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify because it will really help us out. Enjoy the show. Davina, why don't you go ahead and tell us about your journey?
It is a long one, but one I'm incredibly grateful for. So, my background is in traditional therapy. I was trained as a therapist. And while I was getting my master's, I just realized how much we focus on symptom management as opposed to the skills based work that mental health has to emphasize. And so I graduated feeling like an utter failure with six figures of debt and had no idea what I was going to do with it. And my master's was in forensic and counseling psychology. And my husband and I were having a good amount of conflict at the time, weren't managing it very well. He was Hulk smashing through walls when he was angry. And so I found an anger management certification in an attempt to infiltrate our relationship from within and try to fix his temper without taking a more formal route that he hadn't been open to at the time. And that's where I found anger management. I went through the certification and I realized how much of a problem I was. That while he was an external expressor, as men tend to be, I was an internal expressor of anger and I would shut down and I would emotionally punish. And I didn't quite realize at the time how problematic I was because he took all the spotlight. And so, little by little over time, I started out with court order and then I've slowly kind of migrated into this anger intelligence framework that builds off of anger management, but creates it more like learning a new language as opposed to this suppression, control, elimination of anger like traditional models tend to use.
That's really interesting, and it's because I myself am looking to get into some of the I have some anger issues. I'll
Yeah.
be completely upfront and honest. It's just in those moments where something doesn't go how I see it, it just sets me up, and it's like I fail all the time. But I'm just curious, what did your marriage? I'd love to dive deeper into this. What did your marriage look like then compared to now?
Oh my gosh. It was so rocky. It was so rough. We always had this underlying foundation of being very good friends. We were friends for a few years before we got together and we do genuinely like each other, which is also why it made it so hard when we entered into conflict. So it was really high highs, really low lows. And what I thought was a very close, intimate relationship in terms of emotional safety and those types of things, I learned just wasn't. We spent so much of our time going out and experiencing things and drinking and kind of doing things that really kept us distracted. And as much as we love each other and loved each other and were in love with each other, there was just so much of that we hadn't quite learned how to do, which was to handle conflict well. So overall, I would say that it was mostly good, except after we became parents, it all kind of came crashing down. It placed pressures on us that we didn't expect. The fears came through. The man that I'm raising children with now is not the man that I married, nor am I his wife, the same. And so, what ended up being a whole bunch of turmoil and crisis in between has gotten us to this point where now we are steady and we communicate. We have gotten a really good rhythm and we've been able to lead with more curiosity and really rewrite the narrative that we had for each other for so many years that just kept us so trapped and bogged down. And so now I'm very proud of ourselves. We were 5 years into marriage when everything kind of crumbled, and we're now 5 years outside of that crisis and feeling very steady and to a point within our marriage that I hadn't really seen anyone else do yet. And that's been really exciting, is figuring out what works for us and leaning really hard into that, even if it looks relatively untraditional to other people.
That's actually really cool that you guys decided to, fight the good fight and push forward to learn
Mhm.
how to communicate and get over this and work your relationship out, because I feel like too many couples give up too soon. And I'm not saying that sometimes it's not needed, because I believe it doesn't always work out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be those outliers where it's clearer that you'll be better off separated. He and I very seriously discussed separation 5 years ago. We had kind of things in plan, a very basic kind of custody arrangement of how we would do things. And then ultimately, we had this one of many, as you know, when things are really wild, you have so many conversations. And there was one in particular where both of us felt like we would be doing ourselves and our kids a disservice by not trying. And so we kind of radically accepted that we were going to have to rewrite the entire thing as opposed to try to save anything. So we used our friendship, this underlying basic, this respect that we have for each other as the foundation. We laid everything out on the line. We shared things that we had been keeping either secret or, lying by
Hmm.
omission, these kinds of things. We really chose to lean into some radical transparency and really adopt so many of these skills that allowed for us to see it through. And it was just so rocky. And every time I work with a new couple who's, especially within this phase, it reminds me of how awful that time really was. And now looking back, of course, bird's eye view, everything zoomed out. It doesn't seem like it was so hard, but it's just we forget how tough those moments were and how many times we felt like we wanted to call it quits and didn't.
Yeah, for sure. And first of all, it's hard to learn how to openly communicate and be vulnerable. But second, I feel like parenting, like bringing kids into the mix, it changes the dynamics, and it basically changes you. So, you are suffering from more lack of sleep and trying to watch out for another human being. And sometimes that lack of sleep and all that is such a challenge, and it doesn't uh, flow well with the relationship of your partner or your significant other.
Yeah, I mean, entirely. I really struggled with postpartum depression. And what I've been able to understand about it so much was that I don't know that it was so much of this chemical imbalance, likely hormones and all of that, absolutely. And what I think was a more major contributor was the expectation versus reality part. That we expected this to be glorious and wonderful and magical, and you'll hold your baby and everything will go so smooth and you'll just feel so complete and you'll know that your identity is just so rooted in being a mom. No, like it did not happen like that for me at all. Nothing came naturally. I was terrified. I didn't like it. It was just so much work and so much more raw and so aggressive and terrible. And I felt so much of a robbery. Like I felt so robbed of this opportunity that everyone told me that I would have. And then the guilt of how I was actually feeling in comparison to how I'm supposed to feel ended up really creating this massive shame cycle within me that I didn't quite know how to do, just even within myself. And then we have my husband's whole issues on his end and then ours together as a couple, and it just rocked us. And the fact that this isn't more widely spoken about and warned about is a disservice. And it's why I will continuously explain parenting as a bit of a bait and switch, because we're told all these really wonderful things and then it happens and it's like, well, here you are.
Yes, for sure. It's totally a bait and switch. And I'm trying to think of how to say it. It's, some of it's so unexpected because, before you have kids, like I had have a ton of nieces and nephews. So I've grown up with being around babies and stuff and changing diapers. But the thing you don't understand until you're a parent is looking after a small human being for 24/7. And if there's a problem, that's on you. It's no longer like with the niece and nephew. Okay, well, they have a dirty bum. I'm going to give them back to their parents to change.
Yeah.
I can just,
Yeah.
but now it's on me. I have to deal with all that stuff. But for my wife and me, I think the biggest challenge was the lack of sleep at the very beginning of every single kid that we've had, and it just caused you know more bickering and a little bit more arguments to happen, more disagreements. So you really have to figure out as a couple what works best for you.
Totally. And there's so many just skills that we just aren't taught in how to navigate that, how to move through with expectation management of these things. And it is, gosh, I just look back on that time and just realize how ill equipped we were to be able to attempt to navigate that really
Hmm.
well. The sleep deprivation was gnarly. We're so much more reactive. Our amygdala is constantly assessing for threats. And when we're at all sleep deprived, it's in hyperdrive. So nothing your partner does is good enough. Everything your child does is devastating and awful and hard and challenging and all of it. And then everything just keeps getting harder as things go. And it's one of those things that, in retrospect, I wish we would have had a better opportunity to navigate, to manage those expectations a little bit better so that when I'm up nursing and he's snoring and I'm staring daggers into his face and feeling super righteous, I wish I would have had more of the wherewithal to know what to do with that emotion when it was really raw instead of just acting on it in like a very
Hmm.
feral way.
Yeah, I completely agree. Eh, what to those people listening, what advice would you give to new parents to kind of navigate that whole newborn phase, I should say?
Yeah, I would suggest that they take their days slowly, drop expectations within a certain realm, and remember and constantly reinforce that you are a team and this is why you did it. This is temporary. There's so many things that when we're sleep deprived, the train has left the station, it's off the tracks. It's so hard to bring ourselves back. And the advice that I would give that I was given by my grandmother was not to make any major decisions in your marriage within the first 5 years of parenting. And it was that advice that I kept referring back to. And again, not that there aren't outliers that warrant it, but more so than anything, we aren't the same versions of ourselves. We are these sleep deprived, exhausted, terrified, overwhelmed, full of fear versions. And those don't get to make decisions for the next 50 years for us.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And you just remind me of when we were trying to navigate it with our first, because we're I want to say non-conventional parents. We co-sleep because our first we tried to we had this little cradle thing, and we put our baby in there, and she just would not calm down, like no matter what we tried. So we were getting 1 to 2 hours of sleep, and we got this little thing to go in between us so the baby could stay safe.
Yeah.
And the first night we put her in there, she slept for 4 to 5 hours straight. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know what?
Glorious.
I I'll do it. I'll have it. Like I'll figure out how to sleep with a baby next to me. I'll do it
Yeah.
if it means that I'm going to get the sleep that I need.
Totally. And that's what I think it is. Like, there was so much pressure to do things as they say that we should, right? Breastfeeding was just not something that worked out naturally for my body. I wasn't built for it. And my son also had a terrible latch. And so it became this value system for me, this identity thing, this identity piece that said that if I wasn't breastfeeding, then I was somehow failing my son. And I placed so much pressure and stress on myself, on my body, that I couldn't even be present for him. And then for me to get to that point of ultimately letting it go, it felt so fraudulent and it felt like I was giving up on him, on myself. It was just so rough. And whether it's the co sleeping or breastfeeding or how you maneuver any of this, so much of it just has to do with what works best for you. And ultimately coming to that decision between the two of you, we're assessing for risk, we're making those choices. And even though plenty of people will disagree, there are plenty of people who also live similarly and can see the benefit. And even if no one agrees with you, if it's working for you and again, everyone's safe, then there's nothing wrong with it. There was just all of this. Everything was about putting our child on their back. And then our elder son, he had reflux. It was this terrible experience. And then finally, one night, I put him on his tummy and he slept 8 hours. And
That's
I said, we're
crazy.
never going back to putting him on his back.
Yeah,
Like, it's just
and
not going to happen.
yeah, we one of my sons, my oldest son too, has reflux when
Mm.
he was a baby, and he was the first. We didn't figure it out though for a while. It was like at least 3 months.
Yeah.
So every other kid, I've been able to soothe for the most part, like as a newborn, and to give my wife like some time to sleep or do whatever. And he just was so hard. Like most of the time it was like 30 minutes and I'd have to give him back so he could go feed again. But once we figured out that he had a reflux problem, we got it taken care of and knew how to handle it better. And a lot of it was laying him on his stomach and holding him a certain way.
Yeah. But again, there was just so much unknown. There were so many shoulds that then it just felt like each time I asked for help, it was an admission that I was failing. And it was a shameful experience to tell people, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing
Hmm.
and help me. And even myself being in the mental health sphere, it took me a year of struggling and suffering within postpartum before I finally advocated for myself. And it is one of these things that we just gaslight ourselves into thinking that we shouldn't advocate, that we shouldn't express what it is that we have going on in fear that we will be that one who just isn't cut out for it, who isn't strong enough for it, who isn't a good parent.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But uh, what I've been through, you totally have to advocate for yourself. And it actually took me a lot longer than a year to figure that out because it was a fear thing as well. But I'm glad that you were able to realize it and do what you needed to do to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also different for us for the mom, we're still checked on like how are you? It's
Yeah.
mostly about baby and then at the end it's like how are you? And then we answer we're fine. For dads, it's a much different experience because you're not allowed to have the focus be on you. It's
Hmm.
almost like mom just had this, she went through this whole experience. This is more of the mom and the baby show and like just be who you need to be for them. And there isn't a lot of advocacy for you guys, especially postpartum.
Yeah, for sure. And it's tough too. I'll be totally upfront. It's because uh, like I want to mention first though that I want to say that the woman's body is absolutely incredible. Like the to push out a child and do what it does to uh, grow the child and everything. I don't want to put anything down like that. Like I don't want anybody to listening to think that I am.
No, it's an
But
and. It's both.
yeah, yeah.
It's both. Yeah.
But I do agree that there's not a lot with when it comes to the men because uh, it's like every kid I have, I'm I'm lucky I get 6 weeks off at the company I'm at right now, paid. So I'm lucky that I get the paternity leave that I do. But it's changing diapers. I'm taking care of 3 other kids. I'm doing all the laundry, dishes, like all the household chores where usually we split it. So it gets a little bit tough. And it's like by the end of the day, I'm just completely burnt out.
Yeah.
And and I mean, my wife's pretty good at like, okay, well, I'm sorry that you have to do all this. But it's like, but I feel like she's taken so much time taking care of me through my medical problems that it's my turn to take care of her, but it doesn't come without its price.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all a measured risk at any given point. And there's certain times that I will carry now that our kids are a little bit older, they're 9 and 6. There's that sometimes I carry more of the mental load and the emotional load. He takes more of the physical load, right? There becomes this, and one of the biggest pitfalls we fall within is the comparison. There just isn't one. Each time that I would get resentful and feel as if I was putting in more in all of these things. He was also battling something that I didn't understand nor recognize. And from the outside looked not super distressing, but it was what he was experiencing internally. And we have also had the beautiful privilege of switching off on being stay at home parents. And so once I went to work and he became a stay at home parent, it completely shifted the narrative where when I was home with the kids, I was just constantly angry and resentful and bitter and envious that he got to go to work all day and be away from the house and have this identity and not have to wonder where the kids were every time he went to pee, right? Like that was something
Hmm.
that I deeply envied. And then he would have this notion that like you get to be home all day and like you get to watch TV and you get to do this. And, there was so much of all of the you get tos in each other's roles without either one of us fully absorbing and recognizing, appreciating all of the things that we had to do and didn't want to and weren't the luxury, weren't the benefit. And we both have ultimately agreed that being the stay at home parent is by far the worst one. It is the
It's
hardest one. But had he not experienced that firsthand, had I not been the working parent and experiencing that firsthand, I fear we would have just missed the mark because we would have thought that we needed to live it in order to fully understand and appreciate it.
Yeah, it's rough. It's I just think of times like even right now, I told you at the very beginning, we have a 4-week-old baby.
Yes.
And uh I just each time like or day I take off to help my wife out, like when she's sick or whatever, and I have to take care of the kids and do everything that she does on a daily basis, I can't keep up. But she can. She can do all this stuff and manage it well. And she's like, "You'd be a horrible like, stay-at-home dad. It's not that you're not a good dad. It's more that you can't do all that and keep the house clean at the same time." I was like, "That's very true, but it's why I work and I'm the provider."
Right. And that's why I think that the roles work so well. That's why my husband and I both work now because we
Mhm.
both need the separation, our own identity outside of it. And we also just adore our sons and really love being present with them. And so there's a give and take to all of it. But it's, again, just finding the groove that works for you. And oftentimes, what I constantly picture in my head and I share with people so often is this image that I saw a few years ago of a man, a woman, a mule, and luggage. Have you seen this image? It's like a
I don't
cartoon
I
looking.
don't think so. It
So
doesn't sound
it's
familiar.
it's split up into quadrants, and each of those four are within each quadrant. But in one, there's the man on the mule with the woman next to him holding the luggage. And then the caption is, "Oh, look at that man who's putting himself above this. What a woman, what a terrible human," right? And then the next one is the woman on the mule. And then the caption is, "Oh, look at her degrading her husband, forcing him to carry her things behind him," right? And then the next one is both of them on the mule. And the caption reads, "Oh my gosh, look at them abusing this poor animal." And then the fourth one is neither one of them on the mule. And oh, look how stupid they are for not utilizing the mule when they have it. And it's this thing that I'm constantly picturing is that everyone's going to fall within one of those four. And realistically, no matter what, we're going to assume and cast judgment on people based on one little glimpse, one snapshot of how we see them utilizing their resources. And so every time I worry about what people might think, whether it's conventional, unconventional, traditional, weird, whatever it is, it's, oh, right. There's no matter what, there's going to be people who fall within each of these four and are going to tell me that no matter what I'm doing, it's wrong.
Oh, yeah, I can't tell you how many times that I've had somebody like, "Oh, you co-sleep? Well, why do you do that? Why the hell is it any of your business?" Like, what I do in my life is not affecting you at all. Like,
Yeah.
you're not in there sleeping with us.
Hmm. Yeah. And again, with not even again, it's oftentimes, and this is what I've learned the most about being in the anger world, is that most of the time there's some level of them that's trying to advocate or trying to protect, right? There are these anger archetypes that each of us fall within, and those are usually the things that spark you up. And once we know which archetype we live within that is most likely to flare up based on what triggers me, it helps us understand ourselves in the world. And now when I hear these things, right? Like when I hear the things that flare people up, I'm constantly assessing for I wonder which archetype they are. I wonder who the person verbalizing, which archetype they tend to live within, because then it just makes so much sense for all of us in the way that we live our day to day lives. But yeah, there is this natural sense of judgment that we place upon people. And we lead with why you're doing what you're doing and because it's wrong instead of why it might be helpful, why it might be good.
Yeah, for sure. And now that you're talking about anger, I'm actually wanting to get more into the anger side of things.
Yeah.
Uh, you've at the beginning you mentioned anger intelligence. I'd love for you to kind of kind of get into more of what that term means. We're all pretty familiar with anger management. What's anger intelligence to you?
Yeah. So, first, I want to place emphasis on the fact that a lot of people know anger management exists, and that's where people who are pissed off go to not be pissed off. But even
Hmm.
myself, before I got certified in it, I had zero clue what it was. And so, I do want to preface that with like a lot of the time we know that it is, but we don't know what it is. And so, in that way, it's a good distinction to go into it with. But anger management is going to be more so, it is a skills based approach. A lot of it is about suppressing anger, about understanding it, sure, but it's so much more nuanced than that. And so what I've done is kind of evolve the anger management world into this broader, more wide reaching net of anger intelligence. Because most of the time when we're talking anger management, we're just trying to manage something. We're not trying to evolve it over time. And the anger intelligence world is about understanding our triggers in a deeper way, about understanding and getting more emotionally literate in these ways. So it's also about the way that we communicate, the way that we function, understanding the neuroscience behind anger, taking so much more of a whole rounded, well-rounded, holistic maybe of an approach, as opposed to this is your workbook. Let's do one sheet per session and keeping it so universally applied. Anger intelligence is so much more about the individual themselves and teaching it in the same way that we would learn how to read. So in the same way that we start with the alphabet, recognizing the letters, learning their sounds, we start understanding what's happening within our body, listening to what
Yes,
anger is telling us, understanding the physical sensations and those types of things so that then we can build upon it.
that's really cool. So it's like a more in depth type of thing than just touching the surface.
Mhm. Yeah, because
But
behavioral is behavioral, right? Like we see
mhm,
people having so much success in anger management. Absolutely. And we also see this becoming more of like a behavioral band aid on a bullet wound. It's more so about how to behave differently instead of fully understand yourself and lead with curiosity and acceptance of yourself. Embrace it, listen to what anger is trying to tell you, what is the message it's sending you, and how to just not pair that with aggression and instead pair it with advocacy or a boundary or a nap or a snack or whatever that is that
mhm.
we might be, what we might need in order to utilize it as our compass, utilize it as that source of empowerment. And when I've played the tape back of every major decision I've made in my life that pointed me toward the better and advocacy and demanding different and more of my husband, of myself, of my sons, of the world, it's always been rooted in anger. But because we do such destructive things with it, we assume that that must be the problem instead of recognizing that the behavior that we learn to pair with that has been the problem.
Yeah, interesting note. But you brought up so many questions in my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start off with the first one here. Uh, what is anger usually trying to tell us beneath the surface?
Hmm. It's telling us that something just isn't right. Usually there's a level of power that's being lost, there's something impeding my goal. So within that's why I've created these archetypes, right? So that we can understand it more deeply. And we have 5 and it's taken me 7 years of sustained practice and everything that I've learned through that practice, through continuing education and through my own experience with anger and managing it, moving through it, evolving it. And I've determined there are these 5 archetypes. So we have the exile, the judge, the sentinel, the commander, and the defender. So each one is going to protect against something that it feels is at risk. And that's basically what anger is. It's our survival emotion. So when anger flares, something is at risk. It might be my sense of self, my ability to belong, my respect, my dignity. There might be an injustice, my safety might be at risk, right? There's always something that it's just saying, like, hey, here we are. It's the equivalent of being upset and thinking that the smoke alarm is the problem just because it's loud when really there's a fire raging in the other room. And so that's what we really start to understand about it is what is your individual type of anger doing for you and are you embodying it and moving through it in ways that just aren't helpful for you.
That's really interesting. I love how you put the type of anger into a group to figure everything out. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
So I'm kind of making an assumption here that in my mind I would think that there was a type of healthy anger and a type of destructive anger. How does somebody tell the difference between the two?
Yeah. So first, we understand what it's saying. Where is it coming from? What message is it giving you? And most of the time, we react so quickly that we create destruction. The main difference between healthy anger and unhealthy anger is whether I have control over what happens next. The healthy anger will encourage me to set boundaries, advocate, to change something within my life, to leave that partner, to stay with that partner, right? Whatever that might be, that's going to be the healthier part of it. The unhealthy part is when we stay so focused on things that are outside of our control. And because we are so out of control, we do something to assert control. And that's kind of what we're seeing in our world right now. Are so many people we're taking in the news, we're taking in all of this data, all of this destruction and terrible experiences from all around the world. And we are so deeply out of control of it. We're aware that we are, and then we use that to lash out on everyone around us. But I would argue that that's not unhealthy anger. I would argue that's an unhealthy utilization of anger, an expression of anger. I firmly believe anger is our most beautiful emotion. I don't want to eliminate it. It's what keeps us surviving and alive and assessing for threats and being able to take action against threats. It's more so about us having this conditioned response that when I feel anger, I must be righteous, I must be correct, that must be fact, and this is what I have to do immediately about it.
Yeah, I see it almost as so I get really bad anxiety.
Mm,
I in my mind I've seen it as anger as figuring out techniques that work for you as an individual, just like I would my anxiety. Like for me, it's like I don't know if you've ever heard of you probably have the 5 4 3 2 1 method.
hmm
For my anxiety, that works super well because I'm removing myself from the situation and it's a slight reset. And I
Yeah.
feel like there's different techniques for anger that you can do that to just back away from the situation and keep your behavior in check.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many that are so helpful, and typically, what people assume, right, is that only when you are activated will these tools help. And I'm a firm advocate in prevention. So a lot of the work that I do is based on like how we start our day, how quickly we look at our phones first thing in the morning, how our sleep quality and sleep hygiene is. Are we hydrated? Are we fed? Are we getting movement? Are we getting sunlight? Right? There's so many of these things that work through to help us kind of reduce the temperature of what's happening within us internally before we boil over. And so there's so many practices there, but yeah, there's not anything that I think works for everyone. It's more so about trial and erroring, failing really fast so that you find what really does. The more challenging thing about anger is that a lot of the time anxiety can be very demobilizing, right? Like we might go within ourselves. We might have like all of this surge, but not really know what to do with it. And then the anger side, it's a mobilizing emotion. It's a survival experience. And so what ends up happening is we get this surge of energy within us and we don't know what to do with it. And that's why, because it happens so quickly, we end up causing so much destruction. So if we can understand more about ourselves, get literate in our emotional experience, what's happening within our body, what outside stressors might be contributing, manage our expectations, get more flexible, become more open to acknowledging and accepting multiple truths, right? Like these kinds of things are going to set us up so that when anger does hit us, we might be able to buy ourselves a few seconds to make a more conscious decision about what it is that we do about it. And I also place a lot more emphasis on repair. It's really the prevention and the repair
Hmm.
more so than just in the moment than anything.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I love the prevention part of it because I think from I mentioned before that I have some anger issues,
Yeah.
and I want to say that mine comes from like old wounds that I'm trying to heal, and I believe I've set this up as like a defense mechanism. Like maybe it's like things aren't going my way, or my expectations are a certain level, and I need to lower them. So I it's because it's like my now you set your expectations too high, things are going to fail all the time, and then I just react, and a lot of times overreacting. But it's that prevention part just seems like really nice of buying myself a few seconds to really think through things before that reaction comes out and just destroys the night or the week or whatever.
Totally. And there's so much to be said about just leading with awareness of yourself, right? And managing these expectations. There's certain nights our 6-year-old still comes to our bed multiple times every night. Really rough. I'm out of that phase, right? Like I'm not
Mhm,
used to being woken up so much anymore and it's rocking me. And there are these times that I'm pissed at him. I have a big day the next day, or I don't, and I just don't want to be woken up 4 times a night, right? Like there are these parts that come through, and when I ultimately do wake up, when my alarm goes off and I know it's ready, it's time to start the day, and I know I have a 16-hour day ahead of me every day, right? Because of kids and life. There's this part that I immediately feel this injustice. I immediately feel this pang of like, this is bullshit. He needs to stay in his bed. I'm going to lock my door, not let him in. Right. And I go down this whole cycle because I'm just tired. Right. And without the wherewithal, without the skills to be able to stop myself in that moment and say, hang on, where are we at? Right. And I start naming what I'm feeling in my body. I start naming the emotions that I feel come through. And then I get to choose. How do I actually want to move through my day? Knowing that I'm sleep deprived, knowing that I'm going to be more irritable. How can I set myself up with a better breakfast? How can I move through the day? How can I push this appointment by 30 minutes to buy myself a little bit more time to get there? How can I do these things that I radically accept that this is the position that I'm in, and then I take radical self responsibility over what I'm doing about it? And there's so many times that I miss the mark and I get it wrong and I shout at my kids or I say the wrong thing. It's not about this idea of perfection, this expectation of perfection. It's more so about how can I set myself and the people around me up for as much success as possible so that we can move through with as little friction as necessary. But it is this whole experience. And when we're talking about anxiety, when we're talking about that being a fear of the future based disease, there is that part that makes us feel so deeply powerless. And anger rises to protect, it is our armor. And so naturally, when I feel powerless, when I feel uncertain, when I feel frustrated or unsure, anger will come up because it's like, hey, I've got it. I've come to save the day. Don't you worry. You don't have to figure this out for you. I'm just going to lash out and we'll deal with it later. Right? We're not fully thinking through all of these things each time.
for sure, and especially when it comes to parenting. But you did make something pop up in my mind because I'm still working on this part, is when I do lose my cool or my patience, whatever you wanna call it, I'm still trying to figure out how to repair that, uh, moment with my child. How do you do that yourself? Like, how do you repair with your children after you've lost your patience?
Yeah. So I know the tried and true model is to just be nice, right? Like we all kind of just like, I would say, I would be loud, all of this right before bedtime. They'd go to sleep. I feel like shit. And then in the morning, I would just be Mary Poppins. And I would just like make their day extra. I'd be like extra chippy and cheery and like trying to be, bright and vibrant. But more than anything, that leaves them confused of how we got from me shouting to me being perfectly fine and all of us okay. And I, at this point, now go directly to them. almost immediately afterwards. Sometimes I excuse myself and then I come back. And more so, it's an and. We went around the table recently and we said, because I actually live with my sister, like all of us are like, we're full housing it with our husbands and our kids. It's really amazing. And we went around the table and we asked, what one word does each person say in the house the most? And they had all said that mine was and. Speaking of, the Hugh just walked in. Honey. Okay. So they said that it was and for me. And it is because that. So whenever I go to repair with my kids, I say, hey, here's how I was feeling. Here's what I did with it that was not good. And here's where it came from. And here's what I need from you differently. Right? It becomes this whole part where I won't apologize for being upset. I don't apologize for experiencing a wide range of emotions. I apologize for what I did with it afterward. So
Hmm.
when something goes wrong, we usually lash out. We say something we don't mean. We react like shit. And then we feel so bad about it that then we go back and say, I mean, it was a cup. Is it really that important? And then we shame ourselves and make it seem like we don't have an adequate reason to feel the way that we felt when we absolutely do. And that's the other part that I will always acknowledge where I'm coming from. Hey, this is what happened. Here's how I was feeling about it. Here's what I did really poorly. And I regret the way that I handled that. This is what I did wrong. Here's what you did that I had this experience with. And here's what I'm going to do in control of myself only in the future to try to mitigate this for next time.
Yeah. Awesome. You made me feel better about how I've been handling things. This is
Good. What are
one of
you
those.
doing?
I usually there's times where it's like I walk away for a minute, and sometimes my wife needs to be like, you really need to go and apologize to our daughter, because I'm not always the type to do that. I just sometimes it's better for me to not even talk about it.
Mm,
But I do the same thing. I'm not apologizing for being mad. I'm apologizing for the action that I took, the way I
good
handled
for you.
it.
Yeah.
So I'll give myself some time to cool down, and I'll go through one recent experience. So our my daughter, who's 6 years old, she'd been at a friend's house playing. She came home like this time we had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old boy. So they were super golden when she was gone. She came home and it was just chaotic, just out of a bunch of
Mm,
chaos.
yeah.
So she started pulling fits, and she was just bugging the boys. And so I got mad, and I was like, maybe I should just take you back to your cousin's house. What We don't want you here right now. And
Mm,
it was that we don't want you here part that got to her. She started
sure.
crying,
Yeah.
and I walked away, and my wife texted me or said something like, "Do you really have to say that?" So a couple hours later, I said, "I'm sorry. I should have not have said that. But you need to take a step back and not treat your brothers like that. You can go and play with friends, but you can't come home and act like that." But it went over as well as it could with a 6-year-old.
Yeah. Are you open to some feedback on it?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So, one, you addressed it straight out. You took accountability for what it is that you said. You took accountability for why you said it. And I think that's incredible. The and is missing
Mhm.
because we don't want the I love you, but I'm sorry, but says it negates everything before it. So it's I
Makes
love
sense.
you and, right? So, and it's I'm sorry and. So, what we want to do first is say, take accountability fully and completely. Ask her what her experience was. What did she feel when this was said? Even though we can kind of get it, like we can understand she was feeling rejected, unwanted, right? There's those things that can come through. But it's so important to help her and let her share with you in her words what that felt like. And so there is all of that. So it's, hey, about earlier when everything happened, can I share with you where I'm coming from? And I want to apologize, right? Firstly, I am so sorry for saying this. I did not mean it. I was reacting out of anger, and that doesn't make it okay. We talk that out. You take full accountability for it. It's this compartment of an entire whole, right? So that part gets fully accounted for. You acknowledge all of it entirely. And you'd say something like, "Are you open to hearing what my experience was like?" She'll probably say yes. And you share, "We were here, we had the boys here, and here was my experience of you. When you came home, I saw you being somewhat unkind. I got scared. I got worried about the kids. I got worried about this," right? And you still share what your inner experience was and kind of teach her what her anger, like what your anger was in response to, not just that you were angry, right? And then there becomes so much more of this rich conversation that you guys can have as you move through it. And so with each time that it comes up, there can be this opportunity to say, like, all of this full accountability. Here's what I'm going to do next time. Do you agree to be held to that expectation? Hey, next time you come in and the house is calm and you come in and maybe you're being unkind or you're playing too rough or you're being inconsiderate of whatever the household needs, I'm going to say this word. And that will be our word. That means that you stop doing what you're doing and I will be patient in letting you, right? It becomes more of this like well-rounded approach that allows for all of these things to exist at once. And she gets learned in being able to advocate for herself and how she felt. And it becomes more of this conversation as opposed to like the way that I used to complain, the way that I used to apologize to my kids is like, "I'm sorry, okay? Can we move on?"
Yeah,
Girl, that's not
I've
an
been there too.
apology,
I've been there too.
Yeah. It's not an apology. You're asking them to suppress their emotions, their needs, and just shove shit down and act like it didn't bother them because you don't wanna deal with it. And it's exactly how I used to be.
You know, I absolutely love that approach because one of the things that we're working on as parents is to make sure that our kids have voices.
Yeah.
We want them to know that it's okay for them to have feelings too, and to. If, I think too many times I hear people say, "Well, I don't want my kid to say talk back. I don't want my kid to do this." I to a point I do because I want my kid to feel open enough with me that they're going to tell me everything. That they're not afraid to push back a little bit. And I mean that in a sense of like push back to the point where I'm trying to think how to explain myself. So I push back. Let's see, what am I trying to say?
Like challenge
Yes,
respectfully?
challenge me,
Yes.
challenge
Yes.
respectfully, and know that they have a voice and that I'm listening and I'm here for them.
Mm. And yeah, and that's the best way to model it, right? It's just, it's so hard. And there are so many times that I shut them down unintentionally. And there's so many things that we were going to do wrong time and time again. It's so much about showing them by example how long behavior change really takes, right? And as we're doing this work, the other day, my two boys got into some sort of scuffle. My elder said something to my younger, and my younger socked him in the stomach. And it was right before bedtime. And it was just, bedtime's my least favorite time of day. And I was already at my wits. And I, of course, was just carrying all sorts of my own stuff. And I walked straight up to my younger son, who's 6, and I shouted in his face and said, "Are you out of your fucking mind?" And he immediately just started bawling and yelling back at me. And he and I engaged in this whole big argument back and forth, shouting at each other. And it wasn't until I reminded myself that I'm the adult here and that like I'm literally like I'm arguing with a 6-year-old in a not cute way at all. And what am I teaching him about what to do when you're upset? And so it became this whole thing where once we fully, usually we repair now as a group. And when my husband and I argue in front of the kids, rare, but it happens, we will sit down in front of the kids and they'll watch us repair so they can actually see that in real time. And so I pulled them both in here and we sat on the floor and I said, "What was each of your guys' experiences?" And they shared what was happening. I validated, we corrected, they each took accountability, all of this. And then I said, "What do you think my experience was of that?" And he said, "You were angry, you were mad." And I said, "Well, why do you think I was mad?" And he said, "Because I hit him." I said, "Well, what do you think I was mad about that? Like, what about that do you think made me mad?" And he said that I hurt him. And I said, what about that do you think makes me mad? And he kind of just got kind of unsure about what the answer was. And I shared with him, I said, I'm so scared. I was so scared. It was scary for me to watch you harm your brother in that way. I was scared for brother to be hurt. I was scared for you and your heart and what you might feel if you really hurt him in a real way. And all of that kind of happened all at once. Here's what I was protecting. Here's where this came from. Here's what I mismanaged. And I'm so very sorry for shouting in your face like that. You do not deserve that, no matter how mad or how scared I am. That is not anything that you deserve for me to treat you that way and speak to you in that way. And how do we move through all of it? Right. And then it became this whole big thing that teaching them the layers of emotion and how you can feel all of these things all at once. And more so because I'm raising men, there is this added accountability that I feel to help navigate their anger away from aggression and physical aggression or the quiet control side and into something where they can advocate and they can share and they can come to me and say like, hey mama, I didn't like that. You shouted at me and that made me really sad. I didn't like that. And I have to put my inner defender archetype down and not defend myself and just own it and accept it and allow for their voices to matter and be so important and just as important as I want mine to be to them.
Yeah, for sure. I love that story. And I think about you made me think about my wife and I are do this thing all the time. If the other person starts getting too mad at the kids,
Mm,
say it's my 4-year-old son, and I'm starting to yell, my wife will be like, Travis, remember, he's 4 years old. Remember.
mhm.
So we've started calling each other out on it in the moment. So
Yes.
that person shouting or whatever backs out.
Mm,
I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. I don't need to overdo it. And
yeah.
it's a hard thing to do though in those moments.
It is so hard. And there's almost this other part that can feel again, your defender comes out because it feels like criticism. Your commander might come out because you're feeling disrespected, right? By your partner in real time. And you can know logically that they're right, but emotionally, you're like, shut the fuck up. Are you serious? Like, no,
Yes.
don't do this. It can feel undermining in front of the kids, right? Because then we have like the good cop, bad cop thing and the triangulation and all of these things. We worked a little bit outside of that because we did have that going on. And then each of us would just feel undermined each time. And so we use the word banana and we'll use it in the midst of everything, but in a more subtle way. So if I see my husband and he's maybe being a bit too tough on the boys because he grew up with a dad who was like, fucking deal with it, man up, la da da. It was like he was not allowed to have any sort of human emotion besides joy. It was every so often I worry that he's being too harsh and I don't want them to perceive him as being this overbearing, aggressive man. And so we incorporate banana in. We're in the middle of it. I would say, I'm so sorry, honey. I'm so sorry to interrupt you guys. I'm just doing this. Did you happen to buy bananas today when you were at the grocery store today? Or like, oh, do you know, can you put bananas on the grocery list? Or like whatever it is, but then it becomes a little bit inside. It's a word that he and I chose together that then brings us back into who we are and what it is that we're doing instead of this version of us that's feeling told how to behave in a certain way. And
Hmm.
then the shame and the anger comes out as a result of that too. And so it becomes this kind of like silly, some people use silly words. I know some of my couples have used my name as their code word. There's all of these like little things that can come through. But then each time we use banana, we are brought back to the time when we made that decision consciously together and we've noticed it kind of just dissolves the tension and it can dissolve some of like that angry energy that we're feeling in that moment really quickly because we're brought down to earth in a way that feels subtle and loving and collaborative.
I am going to steal that from you and
Take
talk
it.
to my wife about that because I love that. A lot of times I'm like you. The nighttime is the worst for me. Bedtime, I can't stand it. It's and I'm a night owl, but I think the older I get, the less of a night owl I
Yeah.
become, and I have to have my at least 8 hours of sleep most of the time, which I don't get right now.
Hmm.
So I've been a little bit of a bear, I should say,
Sure. Yeah. Naturally.
but I love the idea of some code word to bring us back to reality because in those moments where, especially at night, when okay, kids, get ready for bed. Do you want to read a book? Do you want to do this? Let's get your bedtime routines out. And it doesn't go as I see planned. My anxiety kicks in, and then my 4-year-old or 6-year-old start getting rambunctious. And I think bedtime's that code word for them. It's like, okay, let's start bouncing off the walls. Let's
Mhm.
let's just
Mhm.
start acting like we're wild animals. And it just drives me crazy. And that's when all this anger comes out. But if I had a I'm jumping too far ahead of myself.
Yeah.
So most of the time I'll be like, turn to my wife, I'll be like, okay, babe, I need 30 seconds. And she knows that means that I'm gonna walk out
Good
of
for
the
you.
room for 30 seconds so I can reset.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's a little bit longer, but most of the time I try to keep it within that 30-second realm just so I don't abandon her to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
And but a code word would be great because I could see her using it to help me reset.
Totally, and we'll even have it with the boys too. Each of my boys, we have one every so often it loses its meaning and then we have to reset, but it gives them a little bit of an inside, right? Like we now have this inside word between me and mom and me and dad, and it becomes more of, again, like we're all on this team together, right? But yeah, there is something about bedtime, man. Like there's that expectation that the day is nearly over and we're trying to just get it done. And there's also this other part of us that is desperate to just feel like a whole human for a minute outside of all of the responsibilities of everything during the day. And I do notice myself getting irritable and impatient and just wanting it to be done. And that's where so much of the self talk comes in because mine manifests more as irritability and impatience rather than anxiety, although there are some anxious notes to it because then I start playing through everything I still need to do before I can go to sleep and the things that I need to do in the morning, right? But more than anything, it mine is very much irritability. Get in bed now. La da da. Close your eyes. Take deep breaths. I'm like, lady, with that attitude, I don't think anyone's going to take any deep breaths or calm themselves. But it becomes this whole thing of them just doing what kids do and needing to get energy out at the end of the night and try not wanting the day to end or finally getting a calm moment in their brain where now they want to tell me about their day when I've been trying to have them do that all day with me, and now before bed they want to tell me a 20-minute story about the project
Mhm.
that they're working on. And so much of it is about that self-talk of, okay, big feelings, little body. Okay, I get it. He's now trying to connect with me. How can I do that with him? He's fearful of the dark, and I don't get to minimize that because I'm impatient about what's going to happen. And there's a lot of the justification that I do in my mind is if I take 10 extra minutes with them patient, I might be able to mitigate 30 minutes of a back and forth conflict. So, how can I give them 10 minutes of really conscious effort and energy and then go on my merry way and not go downstairs, get in my bed, and feel like absolute shit for the way that I handled it.
Yeah. And I feel like figuring that out is always such trial and error because
Mhm.
for us, it's different with each kid.
Yeah. Are all of your kids, do they share rooms?
Um, right now, we just have outgrown our house.
Yeah.
But like I said in the very first, we're very unconventional. We had moved my 6-year-old daughter. So we co-sleep until they're about 2 or 3.
Mhm.
And then we start trying to put them in their own bed on the floor.
Mhm.
So we have so this is how unconventional we are. We have a newborn that cuddles up with my wife. She nurses. And then a 2-year-old next to me. And then we have like this kind of split thing between the 2-year-old and the newborn so the 2-year-old doesn't like roll over on top of them.
Sure. Yeah.
And it works pretty well. And then we have a 4-year-old down on a mattress and a 6-year-old who was in her room, but they decided that she doesn't want to be in her room. So we're trying to get her back out of the room. And then we think that the 4-year-old will follow.
Mm.
But now we're to the point where they're sharing a room,
Mhm.
but we we live in a 3-bedroom house and it's just we're getting too much stuff. So we're actually
Yeah.
looking to upgrade here pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping once we start moving stuff and it'll fall into place a little bit more. It's a little bit chaotic right now.
Totally. I mean, as I shared, moved in with my sister because we just relocated up here and we just weren't sure if we wanted to stay. So
Hmm.
we have 9 of us in a townhome. So we have the 3 boys in one room here that I work from because I gave up my office. I just prefer being at home and on the floor. I
Yeah.
much prefer it. And the 2 girls are in their other room here. And I do think that, especially with your setup, there must be some anxiousness around who's going to wake up who and what
Mm,
is that going to be like and how hard is it going to get them down, and then it becomes this like kind of like catastrophizing, like let me just contain.
yeah. It's honestly, it hasn't been too horrible because my daughter will sleep through anything. Like I said, we did have her in her own room at one point, and then she got a little nervous, so she came back for a night, then came back, went back, and then we're like, you know what, we don't even care. She's on her in her own bed,
Yeah,
and uh, I feel like I always give myself an excuse for saying we're unconventional, but I shouldn't be sorry for how I parent. Uh, but but she sleeps through anything. So when one kid wakes up, it's just not too much of a bother. So we've been really lucky that way.
that's amazing. And I mean, we are, I don't know, this whole setup of us like living on top of each other just works so well for us. And there is that part that we live in such an individualistic culture where
Yes, we
what we
do.
are doing is unconventional. And it's the amount of people who say the almost always the reaction we get is like, oh, I could never. I need my space. And it's like, yes, of course, like we all need space. This is also so lovely. Like we have all of us living under one roof. You all, while things are tight, this is their childhood. This is the story that they'll tell their future partner, their future kids, should they choose to have them, about what it was like growing up in your home.
Yeah,
And if that's
exactly.
what brings you guys more closeness and intimacy and connection, then I don't think it matters what Brenda,
Yeah,
says who
yeah,
isn't doing
yeah.
it.
And it's and this I have we've got to the point where it's like, you know what, I don't give a shit what somebody says to me
Hmm.
because they're not the ones doing it. And we've enjoyed having them in the room, and because we know that at some point, obviously, like if she was 16 years old, that'd be completely different.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we know uh, that at some point it's basically going to be our 3 boys in one room, and our daughter will probably most likely have her own room. Uh, but they're still in our minds. They're still young, and we like them being around us. So we want to hold on to that, and when she's ready to go, like we're gonna let her go back in. And I think she's really close. She keeps saying that, oh, I want to go sleep in my own room. Like, okay, well, let's get your room cleaned up because we're starting to, you know, put boxes together and put stuff in storage because
Yeah.
we're looking to get into something different this summer.
Yeah. And I think it's amazing. And again, that's what kind of each time my son comes in 3, 4 times a night, it's what I remind myself of is that I won't get a child who wants to come into their parents' bed much longer. And I want to savor this experience. And as much as I say that same thing of like, they're not living it, it's, I don't care, la da da. I know that logically and emotionally, I still care,
Yeah,
and so,
I get the same way,
you
so
know,
I feel you there.
yeah, exactly. Like each time it flares one of us up, it's like, yeah, and it's like, no, actually, it really does bother me. So even down to like that mule grid, it's still that and the amount of self talk that I give myself and these strategies that I use to just regulate myself, even when I know that there's this dissonance between what I think and how I feel, how I want to think and how I want to feel too. It becomes that whole experience too. And sometimes we bypass the emotional regulation piece in hopes that if I can just convince myself that it shouldn't matter and that I really don't care, that I won't internalize the criticism or the judgment or the fear of what they might say internally.
And well, I saw this thing online where this lady, she's an influencer. I couldn't tell you who she was, but I saw it, and I don't know if it's a is it an Alaskan king bed or Japanese king beds. They're huge and they span like across the room and they're like on the
Oh,
floor.
that's
And
amazing.
she said that she co-sleeps with her kids for a while and it allows like older kids, if they want to come and lay down, everybody in the room, they need to sleep comfortably. And she posted it as a reel and she got all this feedback, negative feedback. And she said, you know what? You're not doing it. We love this setup. And if we love it, we're going to stick with it.
Yeah,
She said,
exactly.
we have young kids, we have old kids. We're not hurting anything. All of our kids are super safe because we make it so they're safe and nothing's going to happen.
Exactly. And there is something to be said about that. That where we sleep and where we feel the most amount of safety is going to determine how we seek help and guidance and support when we struggle later in life too. And I'm a firm advocate for it. If we had a bigger bed, I would love to sleep with my sons. Last night my eldest son couldn't sleep and he came downstairs and we ended up like eating a cinnamon roll and hanging out watching Into the Spider-Verse together and we fell asleep together and it was so beautiful and wonderful and tender and I love those moments.
And it's you're only going to have those moments for so long.
Exactly.
I do. Another question about anger just came to
Yeah.
mind, and sometimes I feel like this is me. So might be a little bit of a selfish question.
Mhm.
What does anger look like when it's trying to protect us?
It's big. It's loud. I would argue that it kind of always is, but there's a reason why we refer to ourselves as like mama bear, papa bear, right? Like the mama bear comes out and she just wants to protect and she will defend against any threat in order to protect herself, her young, her loved ones. And there is that it's kind of always just trying to protect us. It's always trying to be an advocate, always trying to prevent harm from taking place. And so when we are experiencing anger, that's usually what comes through. Even when we say that it got in the way of my task, right? Some people will say that anger is the result of impeded tasks. It is then not just about that task likely, it's about what that task means to us overall. So if we're saying that just now when my son came in and was like kind of rummaging around his own room, fair, while I'm working, there was this part of me that was just like, what the fuck? You serious? Da
Hmm.
da da. How disrespectful. How unkind. You know I'm in here working. This is embarrassing. This could make me lose credibility. Like whatever it is that like my like inner world says there is still ultimately the additional part beyond just the interview, just the chat, just the task about what all of this ultimately means. And this is my career. This is my way of life. This is the way that I present myself to the world. This is the task that I'm trying to complete for the job that matters a lot to my family and feeding them. But our brain works in such quick reactions and it cycles through all of this prediction in milliseconds and yet it seems like just this one task is why I'm upset. Right.
Yeah,
So it's almost
exactly.
always coming through in all of these really big ways.
And it's and most of the time, if somebody pops on screen, crazy. You remind me of something because most of the time we as an individual like this dealing with it, like your son walking in,
Hmm.
even if jumped in screen, I wouldn't even think anything of it. I'd just be like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool.
Hmm.
Because what's that saying that you're always worried about how you're going to be perceived from somebody else. And I just remember I was on an interview once, and I have a dog in with me,
Hmm.
and this was like a second or third interview, so I was like super nervous. There's a ton of like people up above, like on that call,
Mm,
and my dog comes up, starts like licking my hand, and starts barking.
yeah.
I was like, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, you're gonna make it so I don't get this job, and I need this job."
Hmm.
And everybody started laughing, and I was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And everybody on the call was super cool. And they're like,
Mm,
we work from home for this company right now. You're going to have interruptions. A dog licking your hand and barking is not going to not make it so you get the job."
hmm.
And it was just this feeling that, oh, well, everybody's thinking about this and everybody's judging me for it, which
Hmm.
isn't true.
Right. And that's where it's like, again, that you could have led with anger. You could have been
Hmm.
frustrated. It could have been this kind of really big moment because it felt like there was a lot on the line for you. And for me, even with my son coming in, what we say in the anger world is if it's hysterical, it's historical. So while if I had just said something unkind, whatever, had I like led with
Hmm.
anger in when he came in, there's an argument for how many times has this happened? How many times are her boundaries overstepped? Despite her expressing what it is that she needs, right? And so then it
Hmm.
becomes this deeper kind of question of if that reaction seemed immeasured to what the scenario is, then there's likely a historical piece to this that we just don't quite understand. And that's what I wish everyone would view anger through the lens of is this is a really big emotion. And rather than saying like, geez, what's your problem? Calm down. It's not a big deal. If we were to lead with more kindness and understand a little bit more about what it is that they're experiencing beneath that, we would be left with a very less stigmatized emotion and people than we typically handle.
Yes, yes, I very much agree. And it seems like those situations where I actually tend to or take the time to understand the other person's point of view. It's
Mm,
like, oh, okay, well that makes sense. I was thinking something completely different
totally.
because I do stuff like that, especially at work a lot. I always feel, like, well, there's always something going through my mind where I'm thinking something completely wrong and nobody else is thinking that way. And so I have to take the time to do a little bit of investigation and, oh, they're pointing fingers at me because of this. They're doing this. It's like, oh, they're actually not doing that at all.
Hmm. And that's what I usually say to myself because I will speculate wildly. My brain is built for anxiousness, and I'm constantly saying facts are my friends. Until I have the facts, I do not have any friends. And it becomes this kind of experience that let me prompt for clarity, let me ask the people around me, and then I'm working into this idea of what they think of me is none of my business until they say it. And so until then, I have no choice but to lead with the fact that we are totally fine. And if we aren't, then it's their responsibility to bring it to me. If I ask you for okay, you say yes, okay, then my
Hmm.
work here is done. I don't need to do any more of these doom loops. I don't need to determine all these different scenarios about how you're feeling about me and what that exhale might have meant. It's instead there's a lot of this the empowerment from being confident in my ability to navigate conflict that then makes it less scary for people to disagree with me or to voice complaints to me, so long as I can keep my defender at bay. It tends to
Yeah.
work out okay.
Yeah. I think we're a lot alike that way. You just explained me to a T.
Yeah.
I love it. I
Yeah.
just have a few more questions here.
Yeah.
One of them is kind of going back to rewriting the marriage. Uh,
Mhm.
just in general, what mistake do couples do or do couples make when trying to repair a damaged relationship?
A few. One, they tell each other how they feel and why they felt that way, right? Instead of speaking from the me and my and I, we say, no, you didn't because you think la da 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 da. No, you feel like this is okay and that's why you did it. No, you have no respect for me, which is why, right? And so we almost tell them how they feel, which just reinforces the narrative that we have of them. And the other is waiting too long before they utilize any sort of intervention. What we end up seeing, what I end up seeing so much in practice is those of us who wait until we're at the end of our marriage rope, we feel like we've tried everything within our capability. And so by the time we get to this point, we're so full of apathy and resentment that once our partner starts making changes, we just don't have the room for them to do it. And it's a really hard thing to watch. And we almost work against ourselves in those ways. So when me and my husband were working on rewriting the narrative, we had this very open discussion. And I said, I have this narrative, this story about you that you are a fuck up who is going to continuously miss the mark, who isn't going to understand me well enough to or respect me deeply enough to honor what I'm asking without thinking I'm just trying to boss you around. His narrative, my words, not his, was that I was this ball bearing bitch who had it my way or no way and wouldn't leave him any room to be creative and come up with his own solutions. And nothing he would ever do would ever be good enough. That was like one of his verbatims for me. And so then we got to rewrite it. So for couples who are navigating a lot of conflict, I would want them to ask themselves what narrative they're carrying with their partner and seeing whether their partner's actions match that narrative or go against it. So as we started doing this work, I shifted my narrative into this man is trying to be someone he's never been before, the first in his lineage to take on this task. And I respect his ability to trial and error quickly and try and keep trying. And I respect the fact that he's keeping trying, right? Like it became this whole thing that I need to be patient with a man who's becoming someone he's never been before. So when he used to make mistakes, if I had this narrative that he was just not going to get it right, right? See, exactly, because you're never going to get it right. Then once I shifted that narrative and I started working through it, when he made mistakes, it fell into he's trying to be someone he's never been before. Let's support him and see how these things go. When I used to make requests to my husband or tell him why he just missed the mark or whatever it was, there was that original complaint. See, exactly, I'm never going to be good enough for her. Why should I swaddle the child in this way? Why should I fold the towels in this other way? Why should I wash the laundry in this cycle, right? It became this nothing I ever do will be good enough for her anyway, versus this woman is just trying to share with me her preferences for things. This woman chronically was unheard and minimized in her upbringing. And I get to be a person who gives her a voice and who listens to her voice, right? It becomes this whole different, full of empathy, full of mutual respect, full of benefit of the doubt, and leaves so much room for us to view each other as flawed and fundamentally working toward evolution. And how can we support each other in that joint mission? And it's not easy. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a challenging thing, but it's first and foremost, how are you getting in your own way by viewing yourself and your partner in poor narratives and waiting too long to help someone to find someone to help you shift it.
Yeah. I absolutely love though that you guys worked through this and you're leaving room for each other to grow. Just that's not easy.
No,
It's
no,
not easy at all.
no. And there's so many parts of me that even in the beginning, I was in the mental health sphere forever. And I always just wanted him to show emotion, be vulnerable with me, right? And then when he finally started doing the work and he got sober and he was like really trying to understand himself and rewrite these cycles, I started to see him get tearful and express emotion. And Travis, I was like, "Blech." I did not like it. It was uncomfortable. For a while there, I found it unattractive. I found it emasculine. I did not like it. And I was like, oh, never mind. Just like go punch something. Like I much prefer that because that's what I had understood about masculinity at the time. Right. And so there was so much there, it required so much of us being willing to hear that, to experience that ick that I had within myself and say, well, okay, well, just because I see it that way doesn't mean that it's accurate. What is this? Like, what is there about me and my definition of masculinity that is working against this? He's giving me everything I've wanted. And now I'm saying, ick? Like, what is that? And so there is constantly this push and pull of how we view our gender roles, how we view each other as falling within those. And am I really ready to get the version of him that I've been asking for? Or is this all just this constant demand that he change without any room to actually let him?
Yeah, and it's got to be hard, like on both sides, for you to see him make that change and for him to start making that change. I will say, like, I've always been pretty emotional. That the only thing that I still to this day have a hard time with is when I get anxious or depressed and start kind of pushing people away.
Yeah.
I become pretty emotionless, and I can,
You numb
in those
out?
moments of anger, I can say the rudest thing and walk away, and I feel nothing. And it's to the point where I've basically felt like, well, is there something wrong? Do I have some psychiatric disorder? Like,
Mm,
and I know I am smiling, but I don't take it lightly. It's just,
yeah.
I, but everything else is like, I can tear up once in a while. When it comes to my kids, I feel a lot of emotion. When it comes to my wife, I feel a lot of emotion. It's just those moments. It's like a
Yeah.
numbness overcomes me.
Well, of course. I mean, I think that that's a much more common experience than you might think or feel, especially in those moments. When we numb out, there's so much more like our threshold for distress
Hmm.
is going to become so much higher. And the numbing is a response that our body's giving us that we're overwhelmed. It's actually just trying to protect us. It's shutting us down to for preservation. And so around those times, yeah, like we will say things that we don't mean. We will think things that we actually don't want. And there is kind of this part that helps us navigate. So then when you and your wife have this code word, whatever this might be, it might be something that when she starts to see you isolating, instead of it being like, hey, Travis, like, I think you might need to see someone, like anything like that,
Hmm.
that's just like, ugh, go away, shut up. I don't want to hear it. Stop talking to me. I don't need it. It's instead, it can be this kind of code word that's specifically for that this healthy version of you and her come up with together that then becomes this reminder later on, but the numbing out and all of that is a relatively normal experience, just depending on the severity of it. And if you wonder if anything's going on, then obviously I'm always someone to recommend an assessment or some sort of formal intervention if you need it. But a lot of the time, if we lead with more grace and give ourselves more compassion and each other, we might be able to mitigate how deep that dip goes.
So she always says like, I need you to communicate more. So the other day I had
Hmm.
an experience, but I when I believe I communicate well, but I don't always say the right words at the right times.
Mm,
So I said something the other day. This was like 2 or 3 days ago, and I made her get teary eyed and feel all this stuff. And uh, afterwards, I said, I'm not like trying to be mean to you. Like, I'm really trying to communicate with you.
hmm
And she's like, well, I don't like that you feel that way. She said, because I feel like you're pushing me away. I said, but in reality, I'm trying to ask you for help.
mm,
And it's very rare for me to turn around and say, what, I'm actually communicating with you this way, even though I'm not saying the correct words in the right order. And it sounds terrible. I know. Like, this is my way of asking you for help. So what can we do together to get through it? Like, what can you do to help push me through this rut that I'm in to get over it? And that changed her perspective. And she basically, in a way, said, okay, well, then don't be such a douchebag and come up and say it that way from the very beginning. I said, but that's not possible with me.
yeah. Well, and again, it's gonna take so much more. Like you guys are also in the thick of it right now, so like I do think that we need some grace all around. It is gonna take some time for you guys to figure out what kind of language works best, right? Like
Hmm.
I need a plane landed first. So if you were to start the conversation with, "Hey, I'm needing help from you, and here's why," and here's a solution I think that might be helpful, right? It'll turn off that like defensive, protective, emotional part of her brain and turn on her solution focused side of her brain. Right.
And
But if you're
that's,
just giving raw data about like what she's doing wrong or how terrible things are, there yeah, it's a lost cause. We're
yeah,
not going to get there.
that's the thing that I need to work on is just saying what I need before I get into that raw data
Hmm.
to say, what, like, I'm looking for you to help me in any way that you can, and then shoot off whatever it was that I was thinking. Because I know deep down that this like will change the conversation dramatically. I just don't always think that way in the moment.
Totally. And if she is somebody that needs solution focused first, then that's kind of something you can do when you're considering what you're going to share with her, why you're going to share it, what's the solution you're suggesting, and how she can help you through it. But a lot of the time, we just give our partners raw data, and then we're just like, "Hey, I just need you to help me clean this up." But because it was so raw, it creates its own problems in the attempt of finding a solution from the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. Geez, I feel like we could uh, go on with this conversation
All
for a
day.
long, long time.
Yes.
uh, but I do have one last question here for
Yeah.
you, and then just a few follow ups.
Okay.
For someone listening right now who's sick of repeating the same arguments, feeling reactive, and wondering if change is even possible, what would you want them to hear today?
It has to start with you. If you don't fully fundamentally believe that you can change, then you won't. If you aren't open to taking radical self responsibility over how you interpret yourself, your friends, your family, the world, and start taking ownership over that, you will continue to feel victimized by all of the problems in the world. So when you notice yourself being reactive, there has to be this point in you that gets sick of your own shit and says, okay, what can I do about this? Most of the time, when we're talking about anger coming through, it's because things in my environment are not conducive to me staying regulated. So we want to control the environment around us. And once you take that radical self responsibility, determine what's actually within your control, which is really just you, your thoughts, your behaviors, what you do with them, then things will start to kind of shift. Feel more empowered. You'll take more ownership over yourself and ultimately feel that much more regulated over time because you know that no matter what anyone else does, it is up to you to determine what you do with it.
I absolutely love that answer because I feel that way with just life in general. It's up to you to, you know, get the help you need if you need it. And I think of myself when I was trying to get through or figure out my mental health issues until I actually admitted that I had a problem. I wasn't getting anywhere.
Mm-mm. No, and it was the same reason why in the beginning I blamed my husband's anger for all of the things that were wrong in our relationship. Until I then realized, oh, no wonder he's Hulk smashing through walls. You won't let him leave when he's saying he needs to. Because I was anxiously attached and I needed these things in real time. I needed him to tell me that we were okay instead of me doing my own work to regulate myself and know that I will be okay no matter what ends up happening between the two of us. Right? Like there's so much of that that we unintentionally outsource. Our happiness, our joy, our regulation, our confidence, our esteem, our self-control, we outsource to other people and we wonder why they fumble it when ultimately we're asking them to. We're giving away all of our power, and then we wonder why we continue to feel powerless in our own existence.
Very, very well said. Now I'm gonna kind of throw a mental health curveball here, just
Yeah,
because uh, what do you feel like is the biggest stigma when it comes to mental health?
that it's all in your head. That we are psychosomatic beings. And the idea that if we're having a hard time, it's only because of our mind is a very wild experience. It's all interconnected, it is all affecting everything within us. And then the other part is that if you seek guidance in mental health, that there must be something wrong with you. When in
I
reality, it's finding what's right with you and doubling and tripling down on that.
I love that, and it's for me. I honestly did not make the connection that mental health was connected to my body and all interconnected until I actually went to more of a non-Western medicine doctor,
Yeah.
and they're like, "No, like your gut health can affect your mental health." I said I would have never known because I've always been thrown this way and been told this. Like, yeah, it's not always talked about.
No, it's not. And so much of emotion is just electricity, right? It's
Hmm.
energy and motion. And what we're seeing now is people who suppress anger, who suppress sadness and grief and all of these things, they're now having their highest at cardiovascular risk. They're ending up with autoimmune disorders. There's all sorts of these things that end up coming through because of us viewing mental health as only having to do with the brain and not seeing that we are a full integrated being. And why wouldn't one thing affect the other?
For sure. It's all crazy. It's all
I know
crazy, and
it's
it's
mhm,
but I love it. I
same.
love hearing all the different things. Uh, where can people find you?
So I recently changed all my handles away from my practice name and to my name. I'm working on my visibility wounds. So you can find me pretty much anywhere at Davina Hehn, or my website is just a study space. But anyone, realistically, I'd imagine anyone who wants to find me will.
Perfect. And last question here is we I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in our conversation tonight. Is there anything that you want to bring up that we did not discuss?
Oh my gosh, everything probably. No, I think there's a lot of unnecessary struggling and suffering within ourselves that would be mitigated if we sought guidance and people, community around us. We are more isolated than we've ever been, and yet somehow supposed to be more connected based on all the social media and all of that. We are lonely. And I would strongly encourage people, no matter what, to seek support in any way, shape, or form. You're not the only one going through it. I guarantee it. And just lead with curiosity, compassion for yourself. It's an underrated skill for sure.
Awesome. I agree. Yeah, I bring this up all the time with the show, and it's something that I learn more and more each day is you're not alone. You think you're alone and you feel alone, but it's possible that the person sitting next to you is going through something similar. You have no idea.
Well, yeah, and down to your point about going into those depths and isolating, it's a lot of that loneliness is self-made, unfortunately.
Well, Davina, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I admire what you've done with anger intelligence. And I've learned a thing or two.
Thank you.
And thanks for taking the time to speak with me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was an honor.
And thank you to all those that are listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please follow us and leave us a review. It really helped. Thanks again. Until next time.